care about users. Untied to reality, I don't think we would learn anything. Licensing is hard. Still. Normally that's collusion, more smooth. Is it a better user experience? Marketing is not engineering. You're probably living in La La Land.
All right, we're here live from JSNation from Amsterdam. My name is Medhat Dawoud, and alongside with me is Alex Russo. Hey, Alex. So
Howdy.
nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, you're super lucky, I guess, for Amsterdam to be that sunny. Because,
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it wasn't that sunny in the past week, so I think it's a really good timing for JSNation to be in that point. Even yesterday, it was windy and rainy, so today is awesome. So look at the sun behind us.
Can't complain.
Yeah. You came to Amsterdam, I guess, before multiple times, right?
Yes, yeah. But usually in November when the weather is not like this.
It's not like that at all. No. How is the new venue of JSNation as well?
It's beautiful. Like the staff have been nothing but lovely, and the venue is easy to get to. So yeah.
Yeah. The stages was huge. It's really looking good. Cool. So I've been following you for quite a long time.
I'm sorry.
No, don't feel sorry. I was enjoying that. And maybe for the people who might not know, do you mind if you give us an idea who you are, what you're doing?
So I'm a product manager on the Edge team, which is weird for me because I do sort of an engineering job still. I don't really manage any product other than bits of the web platform, I guess.
Nice.
Before that, I spent 12 and a half years on the Chrome team at Google. And before that, I made JavaScript libraries and big websites, big, I think people would call them ambitious web apps, but, trying to solve sort of business intelligence, dashboarding, email and calendaring kind of things.
Wow.
Once upon a time. So
yeah, it's a long journey. Yeah, I made my homework as well, checking your website and seeing what you're writing there. And you put like a big slogan for yourself is that you're building a web that works for everyone, right?
Well, I want to help facilitate that. Obviously, that's something that you do together, right? It's not something that one person does. The web is about all of the websites that exist on the web at one point in time. And so if the web is going to be usable, it has to be, large portions of it have to be usable, and it has to be a thing that we all do together to get there. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I have seen as well that you contributed to a lot of web features, including the service workers, web components, just to name some. You were leading the Fugu project, right? So if you can tell us about them in general and which one is the one that you're most proud of.
Pick my favorite child.
Yes, please.
I should say that almost every web feature that you see coming through the intent system today is a collaboration, right? Nothing gets done by one person on the web platform. That's never more true when it comes to getting something into a standard. I used to be the tech lead for standards on the Chrome team for 6 years or so. And that was mostly punishment, I guess, for misadventures. And if an expert is someone who's made every mistake in an area, I've made most mistakes when it comes to standardization.
That's the way to learn, right?
Yeah. You brought up web components. That was a particularly painful set of episodes. But the general approach was right, where we sort of we did a bunch of study of the problems that web developers were actually having. We went out and talked to a bunch of web developers. We compared notes across a bunch of competing frameworks and tools, and then we tried to boil down into the platform what people clearly needed, right? Like what they were spending a lot of their performance budget or their time having to constructing the userland and try to get that into the platform. We got a bunch of things done. We tried to get CSS variables done, didn't happen until later. We tried to get nested CSS done, didn't happen until last year. We got web components launched, and we got a bunch of JavaScript features into the platform.
And some standards for each promises.
Promises. We tried promises in the first attempt in 2011, but it took the service worker effort in 2013 and 2014 for us to go back at it. Dominic Denicola had done a bunch of work around the A+ kind of community stuff, which sort of primed the ground again. But yeah, these are all long arcs, and they all take a lot of time and collaboration. But those I can't say that I've got a favorite. It may look like a disorganized set of things, but the goal in all of those projects has been to make web developers
life easier,
but also to make them more competitive, right? Platforms are competitions. The web is in competition once upon a day it was in competition with Silverlight, or it was in competition with Flash, or it was in competition with native apps, right? That's still very much the case. And so for the web to be competitive and for it to feel good, right, we have to have the tools for developers that will allow them to build good experiences without, too much effort. So.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think this is also the direction right now. Most libraries are tending to use the standards, not to build their own, way of working or syntax. They rely mostly on standards that is provided, and even browser APIs that is coming out of the box. Me personally, I tried in a side project recently using one of the APIs provided by Chrome, which is, I think, the navigation share button. This is using the native share button. However, I am only falling back to another library in the browsers that are not supporting that yet.
Yeah, WebShare and WebShare Target were an effort out of the Sydney office at Google. Matt Guka and his team built those out. And that, they were part of this effort, right? Share Target is the sort of the PWA version of this, where if you've got an application, you expect it to be something that's in the share sheet, so you want to be able to share those. So making developers competitive, right, being able to be shared to and share from is sort of the sort of unifying theory behind all of that. Yeah,
that's really good, like a message in word that you need to contribute to something that people are really looking forward, and especially developers. And with development, I always see it's mostly challenging, but it's most exciting as well, in my opinion. You are running something on a server, but you never know which browser is running it, which version is running it, which network is running it, which device strength is running it.
That is uncomfortably exciting, yes.
Yes, I feel it exciting, to be honest, because if you could serve that to everyone with maybe something like progressive enhancement or some segregation, you're doing a great job, and you should be proud. Well, I'm moving to something that I have read as well, that you were during your time, I'm not sure it's still now, your time in Google, you were part of W3C tech architecture team, and even TC39.
Yep.
So are you still in these teams right now in each?
No. So the W3C's technical architecture group is, they joke that it's sort of an internal super group of the W3C, but it's basically, its job is, to the extent that it has a job, it defines its own role, but you can interpret technical architecture in many ways. The way that myself and the slate of reformers that ran in 2013 chose to express that was sort of quality control for APIs, right? Okay. Like the W3C up to that point had spent a lot of time thinking hard about HTTP and how it related to the web, and maybe a little bit less time thinking about how the kind of the new crop of web APIs fit into the platform and how they were integrated. Because what you want for a platform is for it to be well integrated. You want patterns and practices to make sense in one place if they're going to do roughly the same thing. So, in TC39, we got promises done, and then part of what we did in the 3 terms that I was elected to the tag was to try to nudge all of the APIs that would come through for review and for help. If they had an asynchronous pattern in them, try to retrofit promises back onto them, and that was pretty successful. So that kind of architectural guidance requires a lot of understanding of different parts of the platform. And again, we're lucky to have had tags elected, while I was serving, and since that have taken that sort of quality for APIs job very seriously, and they do a lot of reviews for us.
Right. Yeah. If we just ask a little bit more about this part, W3C or TC39 is usually like collected from engineers, from vendors of browsers, right?
Stepping back a little bit, these are instances of standards development organizations, SDOs.
Yes.
And SDOs exist primarily as an intellectual property licensing system. Under competition law, if you worked at Mozilla and I worked on another engine from a competing, or even a different browser using the same engine but from a competing vendor, if we went into a room and thought about which features we should build, normally that's collusion. And that tends to get you sued.
Yes.
And I think that's not a good time. But
so who decides if you don't? If you can suggest something or decide something, who decides?
Good question. But so anyway, we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
The standards development organizations are a carve out in international intellectual property law for collaboration, because standardization is viewed as so beneficial to so many industries that the anti-competitive laws say, well, if you're doing this for the purpose of building standards, then you can discuss this. So who shows up and who decides what gets built? I think there's a lot of confusion around this. So it's a very prescient question. At the end of the day, browsers can ship whatever they dang well please. Right? Every vendor can just write the code and ship the bits. These are all voluntary standards.
Standards or not, just ship whatever you want.
Yeah, that's right.
No pressure.
That's right.
Yeah.
So why then does anyone do standardization? The answer generally is because you would like to have an ecosystem of content that you can consume too, right? We've seen sort of the bad old days. You talk about the 1.0 browser wars and having to reverse engineer the HTML5 standard out of the behaviors of the quirks of the various browsers. That was very painful for everyone, and so there has been learning, I think, in the web ecosystem at least since then about what it means to do that kind of standardization. Now, the flip side of anyone being able to ship whatever they like is that no one can demand that anyone ship anything, right? And so our collective rate of progress is defined by how quickly we can get new and well-designed APIs into the platform. And the fitness function there, the test, is not whether or not people from browser vendors like the API, right? I've been in lots of conversations where lots of folks in the room have been convinced that a design is right, and they didn't talk to a web developer who could have easily told them that it was terrible.
Yes, that doesn't work.
Off by 90, like query selector all, right?
Yes.
Obvious failure to not query from the node itself, right?
Yes.
Like there's all of these examples. You could sort of look everywhere in the platform. What you want, and what makes an effective standards like feature development project, feature development works best when developers and implementers are talking to each other about a problem that they can jointly identify, right? And so one of the things that we did in the tag while I served, and one of the things that we've now put inside the Blink launch process is this idea of an explainer document. You can sort of think of it as like the first half of a Google design document. So a design document generally has, what's the problem? What am I going to solve? What am I not going to solve? What does it look like? And then at the bottom, you have the implementation plan. So an explainer is like the first half. Right? It's the problem statement with proof that you've thought through the problem. Right? It's the question of like, am I defining this problem well? Is this something that if I was a developer walking into this room and I read this document, I would be like, oh, that's close, but not quite, right? It's a marketing document for solving a problem effectively.
But it's not coming like an RFC as well, so people can comment on it and change it?
Yeah, it's less formalized in the RFC process at the IETF. We're using this inside the Chromium world because Chromium is where a lot of the new feature development is on the web today, which is why I still work on a Chromium-based browser. Doing that problem statement definition and explaining the considered alternatives specifically, and explaining it not in IDL but in example code, so developers can understand sort of what the shape of the thing could be or should be, or which trade-offs are being made where, brings web developers into the room. We have a lot of experience with web APIs being designed without web developer input, and that consistently goes terribly.
And that's why we have programs like MVP or GDE that are trying things early and give feedback, right?
Yeah, those programs and any marketing vehicle that we can come up with that helps connect developers to the early stage proposals and get feedback from folks who are interested in shaping the trajectory of the platform is extremely leveraged. That is so valuable because we don't get to take things back, right? Like there's no mulligans on the web platform. There's no like version number. You can't just like opt into version 20 from version 19 of the web, and then suddenly you get these new APIs and those ones go away, right? We don't have like a pound include way of kind of making versioning happening. So because it's so expensive for us to remove things, we have to measure twice and cut once. And so this is all part of, you mentioned Blink API owners earlier. That's the group inside of the Chromium project who sort of get an up or down vote on whether or not a feature is ready to go in. And so we try to be as thoughtful and as careful as we can to show that the problem is important and that we've done the homework to show that it's been solved well. And we make sure that the people who actually get the last word on that are not other browser vendors. Are you familiar with the idea of groupthink or Go Fever?
Yes.
The idea that everyone agrees is not a fitness function, right? The thing that we want to test the question of whether or not a new API, especially at the leading edge, is a good idea, is whether or not developers like it, whether or not it solves their problem well. We've built a bunch of interlocking processes here where the tag is part of that. We send APIs to them for review to see if they fit into the platform well. Standards bodies are part of that, right? Getting other implementers to give feedback is often important. They often have very good ideas, but we don't think that that is nearly as important as getting developers' eyes on it. So that's why the Blink launch process funnels all of these things together so that when we get a feature out into the platform, it's had some real testing by people who are competent to tell us whether or not it's a good idea. And those people are not other browser vendors, it's web developers.
And it might be biased as well if you ask vendors.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Let me just, thanks for explanation. That was vague, I think, not for me, for a lot of people who are watching us as well. But there is another thing that is mysterious for us as well.
Sure.
We have quite a lot of browsers out there that are Chromium-based, including Edge. And I am wondering, what are the difference that every browser is doing on top of Chromium afterwards, other than the UI? I know the UI is different, and how you are rendering maybe elements on the web could be different from browser to browser. But are you, as part of the Edge team right now, contributing to Chromium directly, or most of the time you are just fetching the latest of Chromium and try to add on top of it some other stuff? Just to explain the process.
There's a flow there where if you build a browser and you sort of take a snapshot at one point in time of an engine or a different code base, and then you try to maintain it all yourself, that's sort of a hard fork. Most Chromium browsers today are what we call soft forks, which is to say they frequently integrate the latest code from the mainline source repository. We call that upstream. And so the upstream repository is where most development on the web platform specifically is done. We have done features on the web platform side downstream first, where we implement it inside of our own sort of soft fork, and then we propose it upstream. And then sometimes that turns into a long process of sort of having to remove the code here and put it back there and try to get that all done. And so that option is always available, right? We can always differentiate either on the UI side or on the platform feature side. But it is generally the case that the reason for us to want to be in Chromium is that we get broad compatibility with websites. And so we contribute, I want to say, more heavily now than we have in the past to Chromium, and in an accelerating way, because that is a place where we can shape the platform for developers in collaboration with all the other folks who work inside of Chromium, Google, Opera, Brave, everyone else who is contributing upstream, Samsung, Igalia. And all of those folks, because upstream is governed well, we're able to contribute new features and new ideas into Chromium. And so Chromium ends up being a place where we all put our good ideas for the platform there, and then they all flow down through that sort of pump mechanism to get us.
So maybe you build
features.
something in Edge that might end up in Chromium and end up in all Chromium-based browsers later on.
That's the hope. We want to the greatest extent possible to be building platform features and working on platform improvements in the mainline Chromium repository. Not for any sort of business reason, other than that's what helps our developers the most.
Yeah, I see your point. Some features, to be honest, I was surprised that Edge is behind N. It's not now, but it was like a year ago, I guess. Aviv was not supported. The last Chromium-based browser to support Aviv.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea why that has happened?
Codecs are a hive of scum and villainy.
Okay.
Licensing is hard. Yeah.
Okay, that's especially for Edge. But I mean, the other browsers are open source. Some of them can.
Codec licensing and open source have a very fraught relationship. We could spend until the heat death of the universe talking about the intricacies of that, and I don't think we would learn anything. So.
I understand how it is complex, but yeah, I'm just wondering something like, small features supported in all browsers, Chromium based, but some of them are lacking on it. That now I understand that some licensing and some encryption.
Yes, and hopefully in a very small area, and we do want to reduce the differences between platform implementations as much as possible.
I can understand that, especially that Edge is coming out of the box as Windows, right? So
yes.
you have to support multiple platforms. Other browsers might say, okay, ship it, and we support different things later or something.
There is definitely responsibility to supporting Windows applications that comes with being the inboxed browser,
Yes.
As also being the WebView implementation on the platform. And so Chrome has the same relationship to Android and Chrome OS, and so that adds complexity and complexifies certain features. But it's not. It's a window that you try to mitigate and keep as small as possible.
Yeah, I can imagine. Right, jumping to your talk for this conference.
Sure.
It has a very clickbaity title, especially for me. It's Frontend's Lost Decade and the Performance Inequality Gap.
Yeah.
So if you can just summarize it for the people who are watching you, and what is the aha moment or maybe the main takeaway that you would like them to walk away from your talk with, what would it be?
One way to think about how the front-end community has approached web development over the last, I'd say the most popular or noisy end, right, of web development over the last decade has been the growth of the use of JavaScript and front-end frameworks for all kinds of tasks. And the question that I think we should all be asking is that working well? And is it appropriate? And are these specific tools appropriate? And so what I have seen in my consulting work, right, when we built PWAs, we started working with so many developers, and we saw them failing effectively to deliver good experiences. Right, their aspiration was to deliver a good experience, and they were told that these tools would let them do that. But then when you added those tools and the predictable outcomes of those tools and the lack of constraints that come with them to the market reality of how hardware, networks, and software have changed over the last decade, we've ended up with a mix that leads more teams into a pit of despair rather than success. And that requires for the web to feel good for most users that we change our approach and that we recalibrate based on how the hardware and network reality has actually evolved. Most devices are cheaper, older, and slower than most folks recognize. Most networks are heavily contended. And so that means that if we had continued to see the growth of single core CPU performance based on Denard scaling that we saw up until, say, 2010, 2012, CPUs would be 8 gigahertz and maybe 2 core.
Absolutely,
right? Yeah. And networks would have very low variance and variability, and they would effectively be fixed functions in our planning. That's not how anything has worked out, right? Mobile networks are much more variable and fluctuate heavily, and they've got much more geographic variance than fixed line networks. Hardware has continued to get older. The prices of that hardware have stubbornly been in the same place. So if you're a high-end developer, you're probably living in La La Land, right? Like you're not connected to reality. Yeah, you're in a bubble of privilege. Like it's a one-way mirror, right?
Yes. Best RAM, best CPU, the best screen, right?
So at the end, this culminates in ecosystem failure, right? So if we want the web to succeed and ourselves to succeed as being web developers, then I think it's important that we think about whether or not the tools and approaches that we've been sold are actually delivering with the quality that we were promised. My talk is mostly a provocation to ask, is it working? And I think the answer is pretty clearly no.
So. Yeah. Clearly, it's not for everyone, except if you are building it with some progressive enhancements or something in mind, and building for maybe the worst case scenario. This will lose you a little bit of glorious UX or animations or brilliant, high-res images. This is not for everyone.
If we think about the hardware being effectively fixed, and we don't revise any of our priors about the software ecosystem, I think it is pretty dire, right? It's a pretty tough situation. But I don't think that we're correctly pricing as an ecosystem and as a community vast distance that software has evolved, right? One of the other features that early 2012, 2013 web had was that browsers had a very large trailing edge, right? The tail was very long. You had to think about IE6 in 2012, right?
Yes.
A browser that had been released a dozen years before.
True.
That is absolutely not the case today, right? So the one thing that has changed in this entire environment, it's not networks, they've gotten worse. It's not CPUs, they've gotten slower. The thing that has actually improved has been the rate of change in our platforms. The browsers have gotten better, but we're using frameworks today, heavily using frameworks today, that are fundamentally designed around the constraints of IE 6, 7, and 8, right? Like the core design of React is based on the constraints of IE 8.
Still.
Yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to get an API-compatible version of React for 1/10 of the price if you targeted slightly modern browsers in Preact, right? So that's the case. The case is that we have put our heads in the sands, assumed that browsers weren't improving, and that we had to pile into the JavaScript clown car in order to get anything done. And that thesis is now entirely falsified, or falsifiable, at least, for most teams.
Yeah, I'm wondering, they are not aware of that the APIs are out and you can just use it directly, or this has been supported, you don't have to ship this polyfill. I believe this is beneficial for them even to shrink the chunks and the size of the module.
The question that we only have to ask is it working, right? If I trace the next React app, is it just going to be as junky as the last one? And the answer is obviously yes, right? Like we have a culture that has decided that we are not going to trim our sales to what the platform can support. We're going to continue to ship everything down the wire and hope the compilers solve it for us rather than thinking about which problem we're actually solving. And so the teams that I work with, we end up in this long, slow, and arduous process of understanding what the problem is, where people who were sold a stack or a tool chain find themselves surprised at how poorly it's going when they actually go out and look, right? Because that first question of like, am I doing a quality job, relates to, can I measure whether I'm doing a quality job? And if the measurement comes up and it looks bad, then we need to think about, well, what are the inputs to that? What are the outputs? Like, how do I align those to be better? And what we're seeing today is that the default way that people are building web applications assumes a bunch of things that aren't true in order to justify a story about how the world was going to evolve, which has not been accurate for at least a decade. And so the results are premised on a fantasy or a fiction. That means that they fail generally by default, right? They're far too complex, they're far too complicated, and a bunch of the stories that we've told ourselves about what we were going to get about it, like what, if you roll this all the way back and say, what was the whole SPA thing about, right? If you looked at the earliest promulgators of that narrative, they would say that you needed an SPA because it was a better user experience. Okay, that's a numeric question. Is it a better user experience? The answer is clearly, in most cases, no, right? In most cases, for most websites, if you had a multi-page application that was basically PHP on the server or something, you would have average and even at P75 and above, lower latency, right? My test for many teams is, would an image map be smaller and faster?
Okay.
And in many of these applications, they're loading so much code on the idea that they needed to be an SPA in order to smooth the transitions for further navigations, right? That's the whole point, right? This whole tool chain is built on the idea that you're not going to load a different page because that's a jarring experience. Well, if I never get to the page, that's pretty jarring, right? So the question of, if I've got this critical user journey, this thing I want to do, I want to go from, the landing page to the search box to the search results page to the product detail page to the checkout, and I don't really share any UI between them. What is preloading a bunch of code to make the transition more smooth doing for me, right? Especially now that we've got view transitions. So the technology is moving forward in the browser very deliberately now. And we're not GCing a bunch of our old assumptions. Like, we're not like treating the ones that are now untied to reality as though they're garbage and evicting them. But we desperately need to.
Yeah. I double down on the multi-page applications, to be honest. And especially with the new API speculation rules. Speculation rules can help a lot. You just feel that you downloaded the whole application in your device, and there you go.
Multi-page view transitions and service workers, this is
heaven.
Yeah. There are cases where it doesn't work out, but we should be able to treat this as a measurement question. Like, this is my primary concern, my primary message, I guess, would be, if you're not measuring it and you're just believing the story about how this is going to be faster or lighter weight or better, and you haven't contextualized for which users, right? On which networks, using which devices, and you can't measure in a comparative way, that's just fluff. That's just nonsense. It's just marketing. And marketing is not engineering.
You are not the customer in the end. Your device is very privileged in the very high end.
That's right.
You are having a 5G in your phone. So people are not using that.
And the liberating thing about doing the measurement is that then you have an answer to whether or not the stack is actually appropriate. It can be appropriate, right? Like I've seen so many teams succeed on stacks that folks would think of as being trash tier, right? That's a question of discipline. It's not a question of can my computer do it in most cases. And so learning about the problem and trying to solve that problem directly and applying the discipline that's necessary, the constraints, applying those constraints where they can be important to improving the answer, it's about managing for quality. So I would say we've got an engineering culture that's been sort of disconnected from the gravity well of what users actually need, and a management culture that has utterly failed us. So there's a series of challenges here that we need to address.
So the main advice is usually to take decisions based on numbers, on data. Evidence. Yes, that's a better word.
You can't know what the truth is unless you can measure it.
Yes.
This is why I spend so much time working with teams to try to get them to run bake-offs, right? Take a small subset of the problem and try and solve it with multiple different styles. That's extremely clarifying. It teaches you more about the problem, and it helps you understand where your trade-offs lie in reality, not in theory, right? Because otherwise we just get trapped in our own priors. We just get trapped in, well, I know X, Y, and Z, and I want to use it on this project, right? But like, why does a marketing microsite ever need React? In 2025.
Without numbers, you can decide.
Shocking nonsense,
Absolutely. Right. If I ask you about, some cool or hidden feature in browsers that people are underusing, and you wish if people can use it more, I mean, developers use it more. So what would it be?
Content visibility. Content visibility is a tool, and contain. So remember that the way that the browser processes your content is we get some DOM, usually parsed as HTML. That's the fast way to do it. You could do it the slow way and build it in JavaScript. But if you do it the fast way, you parse some HTML, and then that DOM gets matched against the style rules that are in the document, and then that turns into resolved styles, all the rules for all the elements, and then we turn that into a tree for doing layout. So then we resolve the geometry of all of the things, and then we take that and we paint out of it. Like we sort of do the 12 or 13 step CSS painting algorithm for every element, back to front, and then we send that up to the rasterizer and the GPU. And there's some steps in there about animations and compositing that we don't have to talk about now. But that phase is something that we're kind of always doing. And one of the things that I see a lot today in big applications that are really struggling, like they're really, really clunky, they feel bad, is that they're doing a lot of work that's not proportionate to what's on screen. And so each of these phases, style resolution, painting, they all have different controls in CSS now for optimizing the scope of that operation. So for style calculation, that's shadow DOM, right? If you would actually like to calculate against a smaller set of rules, against a smaller set of DOM, the only true encapsulation mechanism is shadow DOM. So you want shadow DOM so that your leaves aren't in this global soup. For layout containment, content visibility is awesome because it means that you can make it so that elements that are off screen, you don't have to pay for them when you do layout, right? So very large documents can suddenly be very fast. And in the layout phase, for paint, the contains, or the contain property for paint and layout also helps you scope down the amount of work that you're doing. And so those controls in the CSS side, coupled with Shadow DOM, can get you real isolation so that the components that you're writing that look like they're isolated and encapsulated actually are when the platform goes to run them.
Yeah, that's a pretty nice one. Yeah, and this at least ensure for the people with poor network or maybe who are running internet on a Kuta or something, they are not paying for things that they are not going to use, right? So you're lazy loading the elements, only the parts that is on the viewport is appearing, and the rest, however it's expensive or not, is coming later. Yeah, that's pretty nice, If I ask in the same situation as well about like a div tool that you recommend for people who are working in performance like myself, that is underused as well, or you feel that this is the best tool that you can use, it's very handy to detect performance issues or take better decisions in order to optimize performance?
So performance work is always about understanding the system, right? It's always about understanding how your code interacts with the system underneath and helping you build a model about what's happening and why, so that you can relitigate that, right? So that you can like make an intervention, the smallest possible intervention for the largest potential improvement, right? Sometimes that's reordering things. Sometimes that's just shrinking things. Sometimes that's moving them to a different thread. And so the tools that are most effective for teams that are just sort of getting on to the ladder there are the ones that tie their intuitions about how it's working in the field. Because a lot of teams have RUM data. Now you've got like the core vitals data. A lot of teams have RUM data. Sometimes it's on a long delay. Sometimes they've got their own RUM providers, which is very helpful. Tying that intuition to what you see on the bench, I find to be very helpful for teams. If you just have everyone tracing the site in the performance profiler in DevTools on their own machines, things are sort of on a different scale. Like they get a little bit wonky. So what you want is a very reliable test bench. And for that, webpagetest.org and hosted instances of that are still the gold standard. They're awesome. We use this tool. We've got our own instance of it at Microsoft. We call it the Performance Analyzer Service. Half of my job now is effectively to be Johnny Appleseed for this thing, go around the company and get everyone to use it, because it teaches us so much about how the system's going. Because so much performance work is not just about building that one-time understanding. It's about building an appreciation of how the system works, so that the system can be operated by the team that owns it over time.
Yes.
Because you can get, like, you've seen these failures where people go and they improve a system dramatically, and then you come back.
A sprint.
You come back 6 months later and you're like, oh no, why is Lodash in here again, right? Like
more features added, and I don't care about performance. We had it good 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I can understand. Totally relate to that as well.
Getting systems that give you control over time and visibility over time are extremely important. So web page test.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think as well, DevTools currently in Chrome has some Gemini to help you out with some detection.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is coming to Chromium-based browsers or maybe Copilot in your case.
Gemini is a closed tool. Gemini is a closed model, right? But Edge has AI assistance in
Copilot? Something else?
There are different version, expressions of it throughout the tool, but it's a space that's evolving very rapidly.
But can it help in detecting problems with performance as well?
We're trying to ensure that those tools improve with AI. The performance sensitivity of a lot of these things, I think, is quite poor today. A lot of patterns that may or may not actually be impactful kind of get surfaced by that. And if you get enough false positives, eventually you stop trusting the tool. I'm excited about us actually building a causal profiler.
Yeah.
We haven't done that yet. It's something I'd like us to do. But there's Emery Berger and his team have this paper you should find, a system called COZ, Cause.
Yeah.
It's extremely cool. I'd like for browser dev tools to evolve to that, where we could tell you which lines are the most expensive. We can't do that today. We don't have a way to do that today.
Gemini even is not doing that now, but you can give Gemini some idea about, in the performance tab, you can tell it, all right, my CLS, for example, is shifting or something. How can I fix that? It can just go through that and give you a highlight of what to do.
That's helpful.
Just an audit or something, but it's useful. Right, if we just jump outside of the tech world a little bit and ask you about what you are doing in your free time, maybe if you have any, and outside of tech, I mean.
Try not to think about it very much. Try not to think about tech. Play video games. I like an XCOM style game a lot. My wife likes to play more shooters, but I'm more kind of strategy games. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. I think this is offloading your mind as well from all the tech stuff that you're going through all the day, right?
That's nice.
That's useful. I have one more, maybe, I'm not sure if it's tech or not, but you are pretty advanced in your career right now. I'm not
what
sure
you're looking for is old.
No, I'm not saying old. But I'm asking if you are still hands-on or not.
Yes.
You're writing code from time to time?
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty good, actually. And here's my question: is how you're keeping yourself updated, given all these responsibilities, all hands-on as well. You're doing stuff by your hand, so the world now is going too fast, especially with AI is hitting as well. So how you are keeping yourself updated with the latest? How you're keeping yourself still relevant, not to fall in the in the speciality part.
Well, let's not presume that I am doing a good job, but like, you know,
I assume that.
I can tell you that having and building my own blog is a constant opportunity for me to go optimize another thing, find another approach to do things. Just like tending a code base that you have a long attachment to in your spare time is extremely helpful for me. I do little side projects in my free time, you know, scratch an itch here and there. You know, like we did web Bluetooth as part of Project Fugu. So, you know, I made, you know, my wife had this sort of battery powered mug.
Okay.
But the app was terrible. So made a website that worked over web Bluetooth, reverse engineer the protocol, and that gets you something.
You control it from remote as well?
Yeah, from your phone, right? Yeah. So,
from the phone?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So like, you know, getting back into Wireshark, you know, was always a good time. You know, I think part of what has been helpful for me has just been continuing to volunteer to work with other teams to help them understand their systems, because we're always teaching each other things, right? Like the thing about performance work is that it is humbling. I like that about it. It gives you perspective, because these systems are so complicated and so complex that maybe you know something about this section of the system, but you know nothing about how the other thing works, or the business constraints that it's under, or the people constraints, or how the team has evolved, or how their thinking has evolved. And learning those things together is often extremely helpful, and it causes you to teach what you know, which is always useful. And then you get presented with mysteries. And I like performance work for this, because it puts you in touch with those mysteries.
Yes.
The other, you know, I guess not very secret thing is, like, because I serve on the tag and now I serve on API owners, I get this early view of a lot of features as they come into the platform. So that's helpful. And I still help design features in that way. And so that's a place where
that's a good
it's easy to keep your oar in.
Every time you're hitting something, you just go and learn it. You're not just, you know, having this FOMO that you have to go and find out everything is going on. And
I have the self-taught chip on my shoulder. I don't have a degree, so it's sort of kind of the only way that I've ever done anything. So.
Yeah, it sounds cool. Well, we have here some cards, so you can pick a card, read the question out loud, and answer it. Okay, I'm going to shuffle them.
Okay.
So you can just pick one. Okay, there you go.
Is that the one you wanted?
No, you read it out loud,
I read
and
it.
you answer it.
If you weren't coding, what would your dream career be?
There you go.
Well, standards work is kind of like diplomacy, but I would be a terrible diplomat. So staffer for a diplomat, policy staffer. Yeah.
Oh, really? That's a good one. Cool. The last question for us is, if you would like to leave people with any piece of advice, take or not, up to you, what would it be?
Care about users. Put users first.
Put users first. These are the best words we can end this conversation with. Alex, thank you very much for being here. I enjoyed this talk a lot. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Will do.